All right, Larry Krueger from the Pig in a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. And of course, check out Pig in a Pickle. They're in Corte Madera, open 7 days a week. And they are also in Emeryville, in the Emeryville Public Marketplace, open Wednesday through Sunday. The best barbecue in all of Northern California. Pig in a Pickle. Try the brisket chili, and you're going to love it. Thanks to Damon and Mary for being proud sponsors of the Krug Show. All right, let's talk a little 49ers. You are going to love this video if you're a 49er fan. I'm speaking straight facts here, and this is from absolutely my best analysis of where the 49ers are right now. I think the 49ers are on the verge of real greatness. Real greatness. Now, why is that? There's a number of reasons, but I think the 49ers are on the verge of dominating the NFC for the next 5 to 7 years over every other team. And let's go into the reasons why. Of course, it starts with the 49ers. If you go back and look at what is the greatest era of 49er football, what's the most success this franchise ever had? Well, of course, you go back to the dynasty. You go back to Walsh and Montana and the 80s and 90s, and look how dominant the Niners were. No question. They dominated for 20 years. But where did they really dominate? Where did they really dominate in their run? Their most dominant of their dominant, 2 decades, the most dominant, let's say, window in those 2 decades came in the late 80s. Why is that? Well, if you go back to the 85 draft, the Niners traded up with the New England Patriots for a little receiver named Jerry Rice out of Mississippi Valley State. And that's really all they got out of that 85 draft. But that was enough. And then in 86, they traded back. And I think Bill Walsh wound up with like 9 starters. Tim McKyer, Don Griffin, Charles Haley, Kevin Fagan, you name it, Steve Wallace. I mean, just a lot of players came out of the 86 draft. So 85, you get Rice. 86, you turn around and you get a bonanza where you get a bunch of starters. And then what happened? 87, Niners were a dominating team. They got upset by the Minnesota Vikings in the playoffs. I think they might have gone 14-2 that year. 88, they wound up going 10-6, but they got hot at the end of the year and won the Super Bowl. 89, they go, I think 14-2 or 15, and I think it was 14-2, and win the Super Bowl again. 90, they wind up in the NFC Championship game. A lot of people really believe they would have won the Super Bowl again, except Roger Craig fumbled, and Matt Barr kicked a field goal, and Bill Parcells and the Giants went to the Super Bowl, and they had an incredible victory over the Buffalo Bills, the first of 3 losses by Buffalo, or 4 losses, I guess, by Buffalo in the playoffs, right? They lost to the Giants, the Cowboys twice, and the Redskins at the time. So that was the greatest 4-year run, and it was keyed by the drafting of Rice, and maybe more importantly, the depth of the 86 draft. That's what fueled that incredible run. Well, look at where the 49ers are. One of the things we used to do when we would go through and look at a roster every year is we would basically just look at every single player on the roster and assign a grade to them. And it wasn't like a letter grade. It was simply, where is the arrow? Is the arrow pointing up, straight up? That means that they're a young player in their first or second year and they're getting nothing but better. Is the arrow pointing down because you've got a player in his 30s, late 30s maybe, who's definitely getting worse? Or is it a combination? It's slightly up. It's slightly down. The 49ers had an incredible offseason the last couple off seasons. They have added a lot of young talent to their team. And I went through their 53-man roster, and I counted 16 guys on the roster where the arrow is pointing straight up. Not sort of up, not kind of up, straight up. In other words, they're going to get nothing but better going forward. 16 guys. Let's go through the list. On offense, Trey Lance, getting nothing but better. Brock Purdy, nothing but better. TDP, Ty Davis Price. JP Mason, Jordan Mason. Nick Sakel, the rookie center guard out of Fordham. Spencer Burford, who started all year at right guard out of Texas San Antonio. Aaron Banks, who essentially last year was a rookie because he really didn't play that first year out of Notre Dame. So he's almost like a first-year player going into year 2 instead of a second-year player going into year 3. So the arrow's up on him. Jason Poe, arrow's going up. Tay Martin, doesn't have big-time wheels, but he's got great ball skills and incredible hands. Danny Gray, who does have big-time wheels. That's 10 offensive players that the arrow is pointing straight up. The biggest improvement an NFL player will go through in his career is from year 1 to year 2. Why? Because year 1, they step out of college, they're adjusting to the pros, life as a pro, getting paid, the expectations on professionals as opposed to college players. There's an adjustment, a physical adjustment, a mental adjustment, an emotional adjustment. Going from year 1 to year 2, you know the offense, you know your teammates, you know the norms, you know what's expected of you. So there's a huge improvement that you see from year 1 to year 2. Almost all the guys we're talking about are year 1 guys going to year 2, or like a bank situation where it's year 2 going to year 3, but he didn't play year 1. So that's on offense. On defense, Kalia Davis, arrows pointing straight up. Love Kalia Davis as an interior pass rusher. Drake Jackson, it's going to be nothing but bigger, better, stronger, faster, smarter. Marcelino McCrary Ball had a whole year in this defense to learn the nuances. He now gets an opportunity. Samuel Womack, Diamador Lenore, Quantrez Knight, who's a really solid football player at UCLA, who some people feel is a corner, other people think is a free safety. Either way, he was the alpha in that Bruin secondary. So my point is simply, just on the 16 players, maybe 17 if you want to throw Ambry Thomas in there, 16, 17 players out of your 53-man roster where the arrow is pointing straight up, there's going to be huge improvement. Then you go into the free agent market, and the Niners went out and spent money on Javon Hargrave. They added a Pro Bowl caliber defensive tackle, an incredible two-way player who's great against the run and great against the pass. So that is going to do nothing but help. Now let's look at why the Niners are going to dominate this conference next year, and I think for years to come. Who are the other teams in this conference? I don't think there's any doubt. The number one competitor for the 49ers in the NFC is the Philadelphia Eagles. Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, real tough place to play. No doubt. The Eagles are, some would argue, the only competitor in the NFC. I don't know if I would say that, but they're absolutely the number one challenger to the 49ers. Or I guess you could argue, since they went to the Super Bowl, the Niners are the number one challenger to them. But listen to what's happened to the Eagles since the Super Bowl. Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator, gone. Jonathan Garvin, Jonathan Gannon, I should say, the defensive coordinator, gone. New head coach. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, one of the big difference makers in their secondary, gone. Javon Hargrave, now a Niner. T.J. Edwards, fantastic young linebacker who runs well, gone in free agency. Isaac Suamalo, their starting guard, gone, free agency. Marcus Epps, starting safety, gone, free agency. Kazir White, really underrated player on defense, gone, free agency. Starting running back, Miles Sanders, gone, free agency. Gardner Minshew, their backup quarterback, gone, free agency. Do you see what I'm saying? They lost both coordinators and a ton of free agents. Now, what have they done to replenish their roster? They signed Terrell Edmonds, the safety. They signed Rashad Penny from Seattle, the running back. They signed Marcus Mariota to replace Minshew, and they signed Greedy Williams, the former LSU corner who was in Cleveland. So they've added a few pieces, but nothing close to what they lost. CJ Gardner Johnson, major difference maker. Same with Hargrave. Same with Miles Sanders. You lost three big time guys and both coordinators. So, yeah, the Eagles have a couple of number ones. They've got a smart GM. They're not going to, the cupboard is not bare, but they lost a ton from last year. All right. So, if the Eagles are not the number one competitor in the conference, who is? All the big quarterbacks are in the AFC. Mahomes, AFC. Herbert, AFC. Burrow, AFC. Josh Allen, AFC. Russ Wilson, AFC. All the top guns are now in the AFC. So let's take a look at the NFC other contenders. The Seahawks last year went 9-8. But before you can sit there and say, oh, watch out for the Seahawks, the Niners beat them 3 times last year. They also were 25th in total defense. They just lost their starting guard, Gabe Jackson. And what have they done? They signed Devin Bush. They re-signed Bobby Wagner, their future Hall of Fame linebacker who's old. And they signed Draymond Jones away from the Denver Broncos. And they added Julian Love as well in the secondary from the New York Giants. So they've added a couple pieces on defense. They got a top 10 pick in the draft. They re-signed Geno Smith. But you're still talking about a team that was basically 500 last year. They played the 49ers 3 times and lost to the 49ers 3 times. So before Niner fans are going to shake in their boots, they got to see more. And then you're looking at this defense, and you're like, wait a second. Seahawks are 25th in total D. So so suddenly there's some up and coming juggernaut? Possibly, if John Schneider has a huge draft, and he had a huge draft last year. Charles Cross at one tackle, Abraham Lucas at the other tackle, Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen on the corners, Kenneth Walker III at running back. John Schneider had a great draft last year. If he follows it up with another great draft, maybe they're the team. Maybe they're among the teams to beat. But they still lost to the Niners 3 times last year, and you're not going to go from 25th in the NFL in defense to a top 5 defense. So, and you still got Geno Smith. So pump the brakes on the Seahawks. Then you get the Lions. The Lions are kind of the chic pick. I know Jesse Naylor is a big fan of the Lions. Lions went 9-8. They added David Montgomery, the Bears running back. That's going to help. They added some 3 good players in the secondary. Emmanuel Mosley from the Niners, CJ Gardner Johnson from the Eagles, and then Cameron Sutton from the Steelers. So they added 3 pieces to their secondary. Their secondary is going to be better. There's no doubt. But this team still, lost some pieces. They've got Jared Goff at quarterback. They lost Austin Bryant to the 49ers in free agency. They were dead last in total defense. The Lions were 32nd in total defense. So are the Niners are the Lions on the come? Yeah. The Lions are an improving team. But they were dead last in the NFL on defense, and Jared Goff is their quarterback. And, they lost Jamal Robinson. They're one of their best running backs, Jamal Williams, I should say, one of their best running backs. So, I like the Lions, but I think people were saying, oh, watch out for the Lions in 2023. I don't know about that. How about 2025? And even then, I'm not convinced. Then there's Dallas. Now, Dallas did go 12-5. They added Brandon Cooks. They added Ronald Jones, the running back. They added Stephon Gilmore, a veteran corner. But, once again, it's Mike McCarthy, Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones. They just lost Zeke Elliott. They're just looking to replace their running back. It's just not. I don't think they know how to win there. I really don't. So sorry if I'm not too afraid of Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. I could see the Niners beating the Cowboys like a drum for years to come. Then you get the Vikings, who are 13-4, and they did add Marcus Davenport in free agency, and they added Byron Murphy, the corner, and they added the tight end, the former Spartan himself, Josh Oliver from Jacksonville. But they lost Cam Dantzler on the corner. and they lost Adam Thielen at wide receiver. And Kirk Cousins doesn't necessarily win a lot of big games, last I checked, and they're 31st in total defense. So, I mean, think about it. You got Philly, who just lost both coordinators and some really significant pieces in free agency. Dallas, who just lost their OC, and McCarthy's going to call plays. And I just don't believe in the Cowboys overall as a winning organization. And then you got the Seahawks, the Lions, and the Vikings. And the Seahawks are 25th, the Lions are 32nd, and the Vikings are 31st in total defense. You have three of the worst defensive teams in all of football. And somehow they're going to overtake the number one defense in the NFL and the 49ers. So do you see what I'm saying? If the 49ers, who just had a very good offseason, if they even have, and they just added Javon Hargrave in this year's free agent market, if they even have a decent draft, the 49ers have the deepest roster in the NFC by far, by far. And when you factor in, the 49ers question mark is at quarterback, the health of Brock Purdy, the development of Trey Lance, the development of Sam Darnold. You could easily point to the Niners and go back, yeah, they don't got a quarterback. Do they not have a quarterback, or do they have three quarterbacks? I guess it's, beauty's in the eye of the beholder on that one. If you like Darnold, if you like Lance, if you believe in Purdy, you're not worried about the Niner quarterbacks. But if you think those guys are all going to fall on their face, then maybe you're not believing this video that the Niners are going to dominate the NFC. But look at the 49ers. They're deep. They just had a draft class that had like 13 or 14 free agents between the active roster and the practice squad. They've got the arrow pointing straight up on like 16 or 17 of their 53-man roster. Three of the top contenders that are, growing up in the NFC, the Seahawks, Lions, and Vikings, all have, bottom tier defenses. So unless you think the Eagles, with all these defections and two new coordinators, are going to rise up and be awesome, or unless you think Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys are somehow going to wreak havoc on the NFC, get ready for the 49ers to be the dominant team in the NFC. I think it's going to take the Seahawks, Lions, and Vikings a number of years before they're ready to run with the Niners and Eagles. And I think there's a very good chance the Eagles may suffer a Super Bowl hangover because of all the turnover player-wise and coach-wise. So then it's really about, who do you like between the Niners and the Cowboys? And I'll take the 49ers all day and every day. They've beaten them the last two postseasons. I don't believe in Mike McCarthy. I don't believe in Dallas overall as an organization. I think they'll be in the mix, but nothing more. I don't think they're going to build a Super Bowl champion. So look at the NFC right now. There's no Bengals. There's no Chiefs. There's no Bills. There's no upstart Chargers with Justin Herbert. There's no monster, quietly building in the corner. You've got the Lions, Seahawks, and Vikings getting a little bit better. You got Dallas kind of stumbling around, good move, bad move. And you got Philly. Can Philly reload through the draft with Howie Roseman? I say it's Niners and Eagles over the next 5 years for the right to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC. And I bet you the 49ers wind up winning more than they lose in that matchup. And I think this is about to be one of the great periods in 49er history. They just had a terrific offseason. They just followed it up with a really good regular season, and they landed a top-tier free agent in Javon Hargrave. If John Lynch and Adam Peters have even a decent draft come April, the 49ers are going to be the team to beat in the NFC for the next 5 years. All right, hope you enjoyed my Niner video. We're brought to you by Pig in a Pickle. Check them out. Pig in a Pickle, open 7 days a week in Corte Madera. They're open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Check it out. Pig in a Pickle for the best barbecue in Northern California. And keep it locked on the Krug Show all the way through the draft, leading into training camp for all the best 49er coverage right here on the Krug Show, right here on YouTube.